Good day everyone, especially to our teacher, Mr. Rodolfo Martinez. Due to pandemic, the coronavirus 2019, and the part of new normal, our group was tasked to report our topic by video presentation. So please listen carefully and enjoy. Our topic for today is all about historical and social factors of bilingual and multilingual development. But before that, let us first discuss the article that I have read entitled Social Factors in Childhood Bilingualism in United States. So there are 5 factors stated on the article. The input, language status, access to literacy, family language use, and community support. So, it is argued that the quantity of input has the greatest effect on whether a minority language, and the language status and attitude about language also play a role. And when the family are proactive and provide daily activities for children in the minority language, then the children respond by learning it. And before we proceed to our main topic, let us first define the bilingualism and multilingualism in order for you to understand clearly our topic for today. So bilingualism, it is the phenomenon of speaking and understanding 2 or more languages, while the multilingualism, it is the ability of an individual speaker or a community speakers to communicate effectively in 3 or more languages. Learning to speak 2 languages in one's personal or professional life is always a possibility, but never a given. Proof of possibility is all around us. Did you know that more than half of the world's population is estimated to be bilingual? So learning and speaking more than one language is clearly within the bounds of human language capacity. However, it cannot be taken for granted because not all people in potentially bilingual environments become bilingual. So let's proceed to our main topic, the historical factors of bilingual and multilingual development. According to Sigwan and Maki, there are 5 historical factors that may have influenced the development of bilingualism. And the first one is expansion. Expansion means to expand, or it is a series of actions done to expand territories where different language is spoken. Just for example, this is the group 1 and this is the group 2. And the group 1 has more power than the group 2. Then the group 1 wants to expand their territories by colonizing or overpowering the group 2. Then if the expansion happened, the group 2 might acquire or learn the language of the group 1 and vice versa. So when the expansion happened, then the development of bilingualism starts. And the next factor is unification. So it is a political actions done to centralize or unify minor territories to create a wider territories. Just for example, in our place, there are 3 towns, the Cahijucan, Magdiwang, and San Fernando. And if it will be centralized, it will be called the Sibuyan Island from Romblon. And it creates a wider territory. So the development of bilingualism also starts. And the next factor is the post-colonial situations. So it is the independent territories or countries with a linguistically varied population. Here in the Philippines, there are a lot of tourists. For example, in Binondo, there are a lot of Chinese people there. And the Chinese people and the Filipino people had the interaction with each other. So there is a chance or possibility that we might acquire their language, the Mandarin. We might acquire their language or learn. And vice versa. They might learn also our language, the Filipino. So the development of bilingualism starts. So there are a lot of factors that may have influenced the development of multilingualism and bilingualism. So the next reporter will report it. I am Rica Miligaspi, and thank you for listening.
The 4th factor is immigration. Cities or countries that receive large numbers of people who speak a different language than that of their host. However, they try to keep their mother language to preserve their roots. It is normal that immigrants need to learn their host language to survive. It is quite possible that second or third generation may see their parents' language as one of the minor status and a situation of subtracted bilingualism. The fifth factor is cosmopolitanism. Places where international contracts takes place, especially for commercial and political purposes. Good day, Mr. Martinez. Good day, classmates. I'm Shara Joyce B. Santos, and I'm going to tackle about social factors of bilingual and multilingual development in society and individuals. The investigation of bilingualism and multilingualism is a broad and complex field, unless otherwise relevant on substantive grounds. Bilingualism in this article is used in all inclusive terms to embody both bilingualism and multilingualism. One of the social factors of bilingual and multilingual is social bilingualism. Refers to the interrelationship between linguistics and non-linguistic factors such as social evaluation, value judgments, and bilingualism. For instance, in some societies, bilingual is valued and received positive evaluation and is encouraged, while in other societies, bilingualism is seen as a negative and disease force and is suppressed or even banned in public and educational areas. Compare the pattern of intergenerational bilingualism in India and the United States, where it is well known that second and third generation immigrants in the United States use their ethnic language and learn monolinguals in English.
Political bilingualism refers to the language policy of a country. For example, Canada. Canada is officially recognized as a bilingual country. This means that Canada promotes bilingualism as a country as well as the whole Canadian society. However, it doesn't imply that most speakers in Canada are bilingual. Multilingual countries such as Switzerland, Africa, Finland, and Canada often use one of the two approaches to ensure bilingualism. The personality principle aims to preserve individual rights. The territorial principle ensures bilingualism and multilingual within a particular area to a variable degree. Personality principle aims to preserve individual rights. The territorial principle ensures bilingualism and multilingual within a particular area to a variable degree. Language mixing is the term used to describe the phenomenon of communication through the usage of two languages as if they were one. For example, Taglish, Spanglish, etc. And that phenomenon of communication has two faces or two sides, the code switching and the code mixing. In code mixing, words are borrowed from one language and adapted in another language without usually a change of topic. It is also a language phenomenon that doesn't reflect the grammar of both languages. It often occurs within one sentence. One element is in language A and the rest is in language B. And code mixing, according to Srihartati, has two kinds, the inner code mixing and the outer code mixing. Inner code mixing is mixing the code between Filipino with a regional dialect or a language variation, for example, Cebuano, Ilocano, etc. And outer code mixing is mixing the code between a foreign language. And according to Moisken, code mixing is divided into three main types. In insertion code mixing, the process of code mixing is conceived as borrowing. In alternation code mixing, there is a constraint or restriction in terms of the compatibility or the equivalence of the language involved at the switch point. In congruent lexicalization, it refers to the situation where two languages share grammatical structures which can be filled lexically with elements from either language. Code switching occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages or language varieties in the context of a single conversation. Also, the style, the register, whether it is spoken or a written language, can be included in the broad definition of a code switching. Code switching has three types: the intracentennial switching, the intercentennial switching, and the tag switching. In intracentennial code switching, the shift is done in the middle of a sentence with no interruptions or hesitation or pauses to indicate the shift. The speaker is usually unaware of the shift. In intercentennial switching, the language switch is done at sentence boundaries. Words or phrases at the end or at the beginning of a sentence. This type is seen most often in fluent bilingual speakers. Lastly, tag switching. This is the switching of either a single word or a tag phrase or both from one language to another. This type is common in intracentennial switches. It involves the insertion of a tag from one language into an utterance in another language. Social factor play a critical role in the language development of bilinguals. Based on recommendation of educators, among others, bilingual families use one parent, one language approach with such combinations such as allocating language based on time and space. For example, using one language in the living room and using other in the kitchen, or using one language in the morning and other in the evening. This is done to maintain minority language. However, such strategies failed or fall short in raising bilingual and bicultural children for a number of reasons, like imparting pragmatic and communicative competence. When we say communicative competence, we talk about the grammatical knowledge of syntax, phonology, and etc., as well as providing positive and negative evidence or indication to children undergoing language heritage development. Sadly, a complete mix of political and social bilingualism leads heritage or minority parents to experience adverse discrimination from social and at work settings, to prohibit the use of minority language in the family and in educational environment. This practice, no matter how well intended, often results in negative school performance and emotional problems for minority children.
So, good morning, sir. Good morning, classmates. I'm Mariel Givalio, and I will discuss to you today about the understanding the universal and scientific basis for the linguistic creativity of bilinguals. So, such a view of CM or CS, CM is code mixing and CS is code switching, is obsolete since the late 20th century. Recent research shows that CM or CS is subject to formal, functional, and attitudinal factors. Studies of formal factors in the occurrence of CM attempt to tap the unconscious knowledge of bilinguals about the internal structure of code mixed sentences. CM language structure and use is taken two distinct forms. So these two distinct forms, hearing and colleagues, test the strengths and weaknesses of both a minimalist program approach and the MLF approach on explanatory grounds based on switches between determinator and their noun complements drawn from Spanish English to Welsh English data. The challenge for linguistic research in the new millennium is to separate grammatical constraints from those motivated by or triggered by socio-pragmatic factors or competence. So here are the four factors which trigger the CM or the CS. The most commonly accepted rule is that language mixing signals either a change or a perceived change by speaker in the social-psychological context of a speech event. Let's proceed to social evaluation of language mixing. So bilinguals are often mocked for their bad and irregular linguistic behavior. They are often characterized as individuals who have difficulty expressing themselves. Other labels such as lazy and careless are also bestowed upon them. So in spite of the near universal negative evaluation associated with CM or CS, the benefits rendered by language mixing by far outweighed its negative perception, which in return compels the unconscious mind of bilinguals to mix and switch in order to yield results that cannot be rendered by a single or Puritan language use.
Good day, Sir Martinez. Good day, classmates. I was assigned to report about code switching and code mixing. Code switching occurs when a speaker alternates two or more languages or language varieties in a context of a single conversation. Multilinguals, a speaker of more than one language, sometimes use the elements of multiple languages when conversing to each other. Example, gracias por the lovely gift. Está awesome. It is Spanish plus English. Next is code mixing. Code mixing is also a language phenomenon that doesn't reflect the grammars of both languages working simultaneously. Words are borrowed from one language and adapted in other language and is usually without a change of topic. Example, Ram is eating aam and playing with Sita. The word aam is borrowed from Hindi, adapting it in English. The grammar of Hindi didn't get involved. Childhood bilingualism. Unlike monolingualism, childhood bilingualism is not the only source and stage of acquiring two or more languages. Bilingualism is a lifelong process involving a host of factors like marriage, immigration, and education. Ambilinguals or true bilinguals is an absolute clone of two monolinguals without a trace of accent from either language. This view can be characterized as maximal view. Bloomfield's definition of a bilingual with a native-like control of two languages attempts to embody the maximal viewpoint. In contrast to maximal view, a minimal view contends that practically everyone is a bilingual. That is, no one in the world which does not know at least a few words in languages other than the maternal variety. Simultaneous versus sequential childhood bilingualism. Childhood bilingualism can manifest itself into two distinct patterns. Simultaneous childhood bilingualism. Simultaneous bilingual, a child being exposed to two languages to more or less to the same degree from birth onward. Sequential bilingual, a child being exposed to one language first, followed by a second language, with the latter coming after the age of 5, is referred to as sequential bilingual. Sequential bilingualism takes place in school or in peer groups and or family setting. Next is bilingual language modes. For languages, states modes as required for production, comprehension, and processing of verbal messages in most cost-effective and efficient way. If bilinguals are placed in a predominantly monolingual setting, they are likely to activate only one language, while in bilingual environment, they can easily shift to a bilingual mode to a different degree.